What is good, Foundation Nation? Today we're going to be breaking down the basics of putting for you. This is basically going to be like a two-part video. The first part is going to be a compilation of just a bunch of stuff I've learned from watching clinics, and the second part is going to be walking you through what I'm currently working on to rebuild my putt and get it to where it once was. Let's jump into it. Alright, so in part one of this video, I'm basically going to just be teaching you the basics of putting, some of the core things that can apply across whatever style putt you currently are using or want to use. And then in part two of the video, I'm going to show you some of the drills and stuff that I'm working on when I'm practicing and some of the tools I'm using to help get my putt back. Because if you're a fan of this channel, you probably know that my putt magically disappeared a few months ago, and so now I'm in the process of rebuilding it. So this first part is going to be kind of compiled information from different clinics and stuff that I've watched, whereas the second part, I'll actually show you some practical stuff of how to put it into play. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to putting is the grip. So if you've watched the previous episodes of this, you know I taught a power grip and a fan grip. When you're putting, you're going to want to be using that fan grip, and you want it to be a little bit lighter. The disc shouldn't be moving around in your hand, but you don't have to have a death grip on it. So you want to have a fan grip here, and then up to you, you can either hook your pointer finger all the way around, have it kind of here, which is where I keep mine, or you can have it on the outside of the rim. For reference, I believe Paul hooks his finger around a little bit like this. Brody, I think, putts more with it on the outside, and I believe Ricky hooks his finger a little bit more inside as well. Just for reference, but whatever's comfortable with you, those three are just so you know that there's not really a wrong answer there, wherever this pointer finger is. And then these three fingers, you want to be spread out. And then your thumb is just kind of rested right here on top. Pretty simple to get that part down. The next thing that I want to mention is I'm going to show you kind of some basic tips in this first part that are true across all putting styles. And then you can kind of play around and see what's most comfortable. There's basically three essential putting styles that don't refer to the stance. So the stance, there's either a straddle or a staggered. But with your arm, there's three basic ones. There's the spin putt, the spush putt, and then the push putt. So the spush putt is kind of just a mixture between a push and a spin putt. And those kind of go from the top down, easiest to do it first, but least consistent, down to hardest to get a hold of, but most consistent. So the spin putt is going to be the easiest for you to get power on and have some accuracy early on in your game, but it's going to be one of the harder ones to be really consistent with, because when you're missing putts, you're going to be missing 25, 30 feet past. The spush putt is kind of a nice medium. It has a little bit of spin on it. You can get some consistency pretty easy, pretty early on, but it doesn't have as much of a drawback because there's not as much spin. And then a push putt is the hardest to learn up front, but it's going to provide you with the most consistency because it's going to be easy to replicate. And I'll explain why here right now, actually. So the first thing with a spin putt, with all three of these, you don't want your wrist to be breaking at all. So you want your wrist to be flat. The spin from your hand is going to come from a pop motion. This is something that Ricky talks about a lot in his putting clinics. Basically, your hand's going to go from here to open, and when it does that, it spins the disc. So that is going to be the spin that comes from your wrist. When you have your wrist breaking and spinning like this, as you can probably tell, there's a lot of points that you could miss. And when you're dealing with putting, you know, if you're 30 feet away and I'm releasing here versus here, that's a very big difference. And so not breaking your wrist takes this joint completely out of it. When it comes to spin putting, all the spin comes from your elbow and your shoulder. Your elbow is going to be more bent, probably not quite 90 degrees, but somewhere in there. You're coming down to about your hip area, and then you're using your elbow to generate the spin and spin it towards the basket. That's going to be the easiest way to generate power. So my elbow's bent, I bring it down, and I spin through the basket. Really easy to generate power. When I'm hitting putts, I'm going to be hitting them, but it's going to be a little bit more streaky in general, and it's going to take a little bit more finesse to get it consistently. The push putt, my elbow is here. It's about like a, I don't know what that is, 90 degree angle, something like that. Not 90, do not do 90, 90's here. It's like 100 something. So it's gonna be coming down to about my hip area. This is the type of putt that you'll see a little bit more commonly on tour. This is how Paul putts. You bring it down on the pole, your elbow's a little bit bent, and then as you come up, your elbow's adding a little bit of spin and your hand is adding the rest of the spin. So that allows you to still have spin on the disc, still feel like you're generating power, but it takes out a little bit of that factor of your elbow bending. The final one, the push putt, only thing that's really moving is your shoulder. So that's why it's the most consistent, but it's also why it's the hardest to master, because you're just bringing your arm straight down and then you're popping your hand through. There's not going to be a lot of spin on the disc, so it's harder to generate power, but it's easy to do it consistently because once you get it down, all you have to control is your shoulder movement. Now, one thing that is key with all of these is the follow through. The follow through on all of them should be about the same. Basically what you want to end up with is shaking hands with the basket. So whether you're spin putting, spush putting, or push putting, you want your hand to be opening. If I'm going towards the camera, if you're the basket, my hand's opening flat, my wrist is not breaking out, it's flat towards the basket, and I'm reaching my hand towards you. At the same time, I'm pushing off of my back foot and kicking my leg out. So I'm reaching my hand towards you and kicking my leg, kind of finishing in this type of position here. You'll see, Ricky kind of just pops his leg out, Paul kicks his leg up. I think Jennifer Allen's one of the players that really exaggerates it, but you basically just want to be able to, all that's generating is it's showing you where you extended to the basket and you've transferred your weight to the front. That's important because your legs are going to give you that power to be able to have your arm motion be the same, even at 30-foot range. So you come down on your knees and then pop forward, and your follow through with your upper body is extending your hand to the center of the basket. So you're reaching out, shaking hands with the basket, extending straight ahead. You don't want your hand coming way up, way out, anything like that. That's way too much motion. It's a straight down, straight up, and through the basket type of a motion. So now that you know the basic motion and grip of putting, I'm gonna show you some drills and some tools that I personally use that I'm trying to use currently to rebuild my putt and how I got my putt to where it used to be a few years ago when I first got it there. So let's walk into those. So the first thing to remember when putting is you want to aim small so that your miss is small. Now this is something that's really important when you're in a tournament. You want to be picking like a singular chain. I personally pick this front middle chain, and I'm picking somewhere in these middle three of the basket, one of these chains to aim at. As the wind comes into play, which I might make a video later on wind, but for basics, if you're putting and your putt is pretty normal, a headwind's going to lift your putt, tailwind's going to drop your putt. So that's how I adjust for wind, is I'm looking at this chain. If it's a pretty strong headwind, I'm going a few chains lower. If it's a pretty strong tailwind, I'm going a few chains higher to kind of adjust for that wind variance. But again, I'll probably make a video in the beginner's guide a little bit later on how wind truly affects your disc. But when you're putting and practice putting, it can be hard sometimes to continuously focus at the exact singular chain and to train your mind to do it. And that's why I'm super excited to be partnering with a tool that I use in my practice putting, which is Disc Dot. So the Disc Dot comes in a few different varieties. We have the solid color here, which is the red one, and then the glow one. The glow one's gonna be really important in the winter, especially with daylight savings coming up. Actually, it's already here when you're watching this video. It's gonna be really important as the nighttime comes around like 5 p.m. to be able to use this when you get off work, have it on your basket, and it'll give you that glowing reference. So you might be able to only see the silhouette of the basket, but you're still aiming at that one little small thing. That's really important for the glow one. But in general, what the Disc Dot does is it's universally made to clamp onto the chains. So here we have the Prodigy basket, which has a lot of chains, but you'll see that this is about the smallest actual chain you'll see on a disc golf basket here. And so that's why this is a good reference, because you can see that even on this, it still fits on there and does its job. It's a little bit more open because of how tight it is, but it's still doing its job, which is exactly what it's designed to do, which is when you're practice putting, you're able to lock in on a singular chain and really be able to dial your putts in. And what I found the most useful about it is it makes me be able to practice putt for longer. So before, after like 100, 200 putts, however long I was practice putting, I would kind of start getting the chains get blurry, stuff like that. I couldn't dial my putt in. I couldn't stay focused on a singular chain. With this being on the basket, it's a lot easier for me to continue practice putting because it's not as much of a strain on my eyes. It's a lot easier for my eyes to focus on this bright red thing on the basket than one singular chain, but it's still training me and my body and my muscle memory to be aiming small so that my miss is small. And that's just something that's kind of true, is a big thing in golf. You know, you aim at a little leaf down the fairway when you're hitting a ball, and the same in disc golf, instead of just aiming at the whole fairway, because then when you're aiming small, your miss can miss and still hit your mark. So in disc golf, if I'm aiming at the singular chain, I miss by a few chains, that putt's still going in. Whereas if I'm aiming at the whole basket and I pull right, I airballed it. That's the whole premise behind it, and the Disc Dot is a great tool to use to be able to do that. If you're interested in checking those out, you can head over to our website. I'll put the link in the description below. We have them for sale there, and you can check out both the singular color and the glow one to really step up your putting game. But now let's get into some drills that we use as well. So this first drill is one that's really good on dialing in your comfort zone and helping you push that comfort zone farther and farther away from the basket. If you don't know what a comfort zone is, it's basically where you step up and you're confident that no matter what the pressure is, no matter what's going on, you're making that putt 100% of the time. So you want to start with a disc on the ground. I'm using another one of my putters, but you could just use a random disc out of your bag, it doesn't matter. But you do want to use a disc instead of a mini, and I'll explain why here in a second. And you want to put it about 10 to 15 feet away from the basket when you're just starting this drill out, because that'll help you feel out your comfort zone. And if you're just learning to putt, this is a great one because it kind of gets a little bit of pressure on the putt, as you'll see. Then you want to have your practice putters. For this drill, I'm only going to be using 2, but you can use however many you want and then make the drill work for you. So with only 2 putters, which that seems to be the most common number of putters that people have, with 2 putters, basically what I'm going to do is from this spot, I'm going to putt both of them. If I make both of them, I flip the disc back one, moving me back about a foot. If I make one and miss one, the disc stays where it is. If I miss both, I flip the disc forward a spot. Then I go rebound, come back, reset. So it looks something like this. So I made the first, made the second, I would stop, flip the disc back, and then walk up. Now why I personally use 2 instead of having like a big stack of putters is that forces me to kind of have a tournament rhythm more so than having a stack of 10 putters and just standing here spinning them out, and that'll create bad habits. So I personally, when I'm working on this drill specifically, I like only having 2 because that helps me get a little bit more into a tournament mindset, and that also helps that second putt feel a lot more important because I just made the first one. If I want to move back, I've got to make the second one, or I just missed the first one. If I don't want to flip the disc forward, I've got to make the second one. So it puts a little bit of pressure on that second putt. Whereas if I had 10, putters standing here and I made 8 of them, like, oh, I'm already flipping the disc, who cares? So that's kind of why I personally use 2, and that's also why I personally like this drill because, when you've been doing this for 20, 30 minutes, you might now be 25 feet away from the basket and you're really on the edge of your comfort zone. It's really pushing you to continue to flip that disc back. You really have to be nailing your putts and staying focused on the disc dot or just one singular chain on the basket. So that's drill number 1. All right, so the next thing that I'm gonna talk about is called Perfect Putt 360. So basically it's an app on your phone. I believe it's about $1, but there's also a free alternative that I talk about here in a second. But what you're gonna basically do is once you get in the app, you hit play and it pulls up this screen where it shows you from, I believe it's 10, 15, 20, 25, and then 30 feet, excuse me. So 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, you go back 5 feet each time. You're gonna take 10 putts from each of those spots. Each putt gives you a certain amount of points, and as you can tell on the screen here, the farther back you go, the more stuff's worth. So on this first one, if I was 10 feet away and I hit the all made button, that gives me 19 points. Let's say I make all made at the 15-foot spot. Now I have 25. Go back to the 20-foot putt. I made my first in, and I only made half my putts. Then it'll really start dialing in to where you can see your score and be able to track yourself. So you go through 2 rounds of this, 10 putts at each spot, and then the perfect score is going to be 360. Most humans, other than Paul, do not get 360. Touring pros probably do, but it'll really tell you like where your putt starts to break down, and you can go back into analytics afterwards and be able to look at your percentages, stuff like that, where your score is, and track your progress as you putt. So what I like to do is I normally start my putting practice with that drill I just showed you of flipping the disc. Once my putt feels pretty warmed up, then I go into Perfect Putt 360 to finish out my putting practice. So it'll give you a full 100 putts when you do it, and then I'll finish out my putting practice and I'm able to track my progress and kind of see how I'm doing and make sure that I'm on that steady incline. If you don't want to pay the $1 for the app, then you can head over to this app here. I'm gonna link this in the description. You just go into your Safari or whatever your website thing is on your phone, and you're able to come into here, and basically it starts you off at 10 meters. So it's gonna start you off at the circle's edge. You putt 5 spots from there. So let's say that from the 10 meters, I make 2 of them. Since I made 2, it tells me where to go to my next one, which is 7 meters. So from 7 meters, let's say I make 4. 4 sends me to 9 meters. Basically how the game works is if you make 0, you go to 5 meters. If you make 1, you go to 6 meters. 2, 7, 3, 8, 4, 9. If you made all 5, you go to 10. So if from 30 feet, I'm not feeling it from there, I'm constantly making 2, it's gonna constantly be sending me to that 7 meter, 21 foot range where I can putt from there. If I'm making 4 from there, I move back, and it keeps track of your points. Again, it's a 100 putt system, so once I finish out, I'm gonna just keep hitting 3 here. Once I finish out, here at the bottom, it'll show me my statistics from there and how much I was making from each spot. So obviously this is a fake one because I tapped a bunch out, but you can see where it says like 1 out of 5 putts from 5 meters, whereas I was 4 out of 10 putts from 10 meters in this scenario, which led me to 55% putting out of 100 inside the circle. So it shows you those statistics, and then when you log back in, it basically remembers you, and you just restart your game, and it'll keep your kind of stats going the more you keep playing. So you can see at the bottom here, I've apparently played twice on my phone, on this phone, and you can kind of see the different stats and the points there. And that's a good free alternative that you can just access on an iPad, any of your phone, whatever it is. It's called Putts. I'll link it in the description below. It's from Croydon Disc Golf. I have no idea who they are. I don't even know, because I've never really heard of this. I found it on Reddit one day, and I think it's one of the best like putting practice tools out there that no one's talking about. So check that link in the description below to go check this thing out, because this is something that when I was really into putting and I was playing a lot of tournaments, this is something that I really credit being able to get good at putting, was being able to just grind this out in my backyard over and over and over and track my statistics to tell, hey, that 24-foot range I'm really struggling at. I need to go back to my comfort zone, start there, and work on that. So I think those are 2 ways that whether you're already playing and you want to get better at putting, or you're just starting, you want to really dial in your putt and learn your putt, pick a style and play one of these games and then just stick to it. I think that's the more important thing with putting, is as long as you have your fundamentals right, so as long as you have the fan grip, you're not breaking your wrist, you're not doing anything wild with your putt, if you go outside and you practice it consistently and you're consistently following through the basket, you will get better at putting. So don't get frustrated when you go out after watching this video and your first putt, you know, you're airballing left and right or whatever. It's a weird motion, it's not natural. You have to get used to it to get that muscle memory built up, and whatever feels the most natural to you, just stick with it. If you're someone who knows I'm not gonna have a lot of time to dedicate to my game, dedicate to getting better, go with a spin putt, because that's gonna be the easiest one for you just to go out and have fun, because just throwing it, that's a much more natural motion than having your shoulder joint locked and being a push putter. And then if you're able to dedicate a lot of time and you really wanna practice and take your game to that next level, try the spush or the push, whichever one is feeling better for you. Personally, I've never liked a push putt. It just is something that I was never good at, I could never figure out. So I've always been a spush putter, bringing it down to my hip and coming up. And that's something that just takes more practice than the spin putt. But if you're willing to dedicate the time to it, it's something that you'll be able to hit a lot more consistently out there on the course. Hopefully I covered everything in this video. I feel like I was kind of all over the place a little bit, but I think I hit the key points. So comment down below if there's anything I didn't cover and you have questions about, and what videos you want to see covered in this series as well. Check the links in the description below to our website, social media, and all that good stuff. And other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next one. I made that.